Hello. After Plato's death, his student, and much later than that, almost 3 centuries after Aristotle, Horace contributed to the development of critical theory. So today we'll be talking about Aristotle.
Well, some say the best way to learn is to have an examination. So let's start with a quiz. I know you are going to say we haven't learned much, so how are we going to answer the questions? Well, the question is there for you to solve. Enjoy. Well, of course, Aristotle borrowed a lot from earlier philosophies. That's understandable. However, the proposal given in the form of a sentence states that previous or former philosophies were speculative in nature. That is to say, Aristotle's work, unlike or in opposition to the earlier philosophies, was rather realistic and more data based. So the correct answer is B.
A good dictionary can help you learn your subject better. For centuries, people used dictionaries to learn about the world around themselves. Today, I'll be using Grollier's Universal Encyclopedia to learn more about Aristotle. Now, I want you to listen to the entry on Aristotle and take down some notes. As you may imagine, what follows is a quiz. Aristotle, 384, 322 before Christ. Philosopher and scientist from Stagira, Greece. Aristotle came to Athens in 367 and for 20 years was a member of Plato's academy. After Plato's death in 347, he joined a circle of Platonists in Asia Minor, that is Anatolia, under the patronage of Hermeias, king of Atarneus. There, and in the neighboring island of Lesbos, Aristotle taught and carried on research in biology. In 343, he was appointed tutor to the young Prince Alexander, later to be called the Great, at Pella. In 334, Aristotle returned to Athens and founded his own school. Its atmosphere was as much scientific as philosophical, and pupils collected materials on such subjects as medicine and botany. This amassing of scientific data was in striking contrast to the speculative character of earlier philosophies. To this category belongs the collection of 158 political systems, of which the Athenian, written by Aristotle himself, is the only extant one. In the outburst of anti-Macedonian feeling after Alexander's death in 323, a charge of impiety was brought against Aristotle, and he retired to Chalcis in Euboea, where he died a year later. Aristotle, like Plato, wrote dialogues which won high praise in antiquity for their literary form and style. These, however, have perished. What survives is for the most part either lecture manuscripts or research notebooks compiled for school use only. Aristotle sympathized with the common sense view that the world of experience is real and must be explained by internal causes. He rejected the realm of transcendental entities, the Platonic ideas, in other words, which he saw only as a visionary duplication of the natural world. impossible to bring into causal relation with it save by poetic metaphor. He retained through life from his academic inheritance both a teleological outlook and a sense of the supreme importance of form, and these on several occasions led to difficulties in his own interpretation of nature. Under certain titles, the dictionary lists some other aspects of Aristotle's work, such as matter and form, the idea of God, ethics, the soul, science, and logic.
Aristotle was one of the first philosophers who wrote about sciences. He even categorized sciences. Now, let's listen to a mini lecture on how Aristotle categorized and understood sciences.
Aristotle believed that there were three sciences in the world. And even today, whenever a new scientific field appears or comes into being or starts to be used, it falls into one of these three categories. The first division of science, according to Aristotle, was theoretical science. Those who engaged in theoretical science seek knowledge for its own sake. The second division of science for Aristotle was productive sciences, such as science aims at the creation of a product. A science of computers, for example, aims at the production of computers. Finally, the third and final division of science for Aristotle was practical science. Such as science aims at knowledge of action or praxis. The science of action underlies the ability to act well or to live the good life, which according to Aristotle was a life guided by reason. So what does Aristotle say about rhetoric, one of his most important sciences? Aristotle regards rhetoric and the arts as belonging to the productive sciences. Rhetoric and the arts differ from the practical sciences, such as ethics and politics, and from the theoretical sciences, such as philosophy and religion. Productive sciences aim to produce real products like ships and buildings and artifacts, while finding remedies to problems in agriculture and medicine. Rhetoric is a productive science because it aims at the production of persuasive speech. Aristotle approached all these activities within his explanatory framework. Some of his ideas can be found in his work, Poetics. Aristotle studied and commented on tragedy greatly in his work titled Poetics. Aristotle defines tragedy as follows. Tragedy, then, is an imitation of an action that is serious and complete, and which has some greatness about it. It imitates in words with pleasant accompaniments, each type belonging separately to the different parts of the work. It imitates people performing actions and does not rely on narration. It achieves, through pity and fear, the catharsis of these sorts of feelings. Tragedy, then, must deal with the lives of great men, because only their actions will be of consequence to the larger community. Therefore, for Aristotle, although there were slaves and common people in his society, tragic heroes were of noble background. Furthermore, Aristotle articulated that our personalities as human beings lead us to our downfall, which is most visible in his tragic characters, who were nobles. I quote, "Men acquire a particular quality by constantly acting in a particular way. Therefore, for Aristotle, his tragic character is a unique character with profoundly um, original characteristics, personality traits that are found in society, but in this particular tragic hero, these qualities are most visible. And for Aristotle, again, his tragic character falls and because of his shortcomings, about which we will talk shortly.
Well, the answer to this question was rather easy. Remember, for Aristotle, tragic characters were of upper classes, noble people, and most of the time, very influential people, not ordinary and everyday people. So the correct answer is E.
Aristotle writes briefly about the elements of tragedy. He talks about the plot, characters, and the three unities. Plot is the most important element of a tragedy. Plot refers to the sequence of events and actions in a play. Therefore, briefly, what happens in a play? For Aristotle, a tragedy should have only one plot, and all of the action should relate to this particular one and only plot. Character is the second to plot in terms of its importance. Because tragedy imitates an action performed by a person, primarily for the sake of the actions they perform, rather than out of any interest in the psychology of the character, character or characterization is less important than the plot itself. Thus, the character only serves to realize the plot. The character's aims must be good. He must be a good person from a noble family with good deeds. The character must be appropriate. There should be a likeness to human nature in his doings. And a character must be consistent, not imbalanced. The protagonist, of course, is the main character, or the major character. His actions are most significant to the plot. But remember, plot is primary over character. The tragic hero, that is to say the protagonist, the tragic hero's habits must tend toward the good, except for one single quality or a personality trait of the character, which brings his downfall. Although the protagonist, that is to say, although the tragic hero has many fundamentally beautiful, important, accepted, adorable, respectable qualities, there is one single personality trait of the character that brings his downfall. Now, why does the tragic hero fall? Because the overall aim of tragedy as a genre is to excite or to increase pity and fear in the spectator, viewer. Pity and fear will be provoked only if the protagonist's fortunes go from good to bad. So in the beginning and up to a certain point in the play, in the tragic play or in the tragedy, the protagonist appears to be a noble person with good personality traits. At one point, we see that his fortune changes from good to bad. In that sense, the character is fundamentally important to understand how he contributes or how his downfall contributes to the excitement produced by the plot or the realization of the plot. The plot is realized through the unities of time, place, and action. In Greek theater, time, place, and action are inseparable. All action is interconnected. Tragedy represents a complete action, a clear beginning, a middle, and end.
What do you do after a tiring day? You go home, take a shower, listen to some fine music, and relax. That is to say, you experience catharsis. Catharsis is getting rid of your tension through art and music. That's what Aristotle particularly talked about.
When you watch a tragedy, you see that a good character starts experiencing something terrible. Oftentimes, a disaster starts to replace his good fortune. It is often assumed that the goal of tragedy is catharsis, the purification or purgation of the emotions aroused in a tragic performance. Catharsis refers to an emotional release for the characters in a literary work, or an emotional release for the audience. In Greek, the word catharsis literally means cleansing. The emotional release that characters or the audience experience during the catharsis can lead to a sense of purification, forgiveness, and even renewal. Most tragic works of literature end with catharsis, both for the characters as well as for all audience members. When you watch a tragedy or a tragic play, you identify yourself with the major character, the protagonist. And you see that some of the bad qualities or evilness in that particular character can be found in your own personality. This similarity causes tense and intense and burdensome feeling for you. At the end of the play, at the end of seeing that the tragic character inevitably falls, you realize that you have to get rid of this similarity, this sameness. So you feel renewed, most probably. While your tension is relieved, now knowing that what happened to that particular character is something he deserved, you at the same time note that you have to change yourself. You have to renew yourself. There are some very important and very popular examples of catharsis. For instance, playing the piano is a catharsis for a tired, busy mother after a long day of work, or a man who killed someone in a drunk driving incident experiences catharsis by volunteering in a children's shelter. That is to say, he tries to get rid of this evil experience by trying to be good. In Oedipus Rex, a Greek tragedy, a very popular one, Oedipus unknowingly marries his own mother. At the end of the play, when the tragic mistake has been revealed, Jocasta commits suicide, and Oedipus gouges his eyes out. Both characters thus experience release. Jocasta by seeking release in death, and Oedipus by doing penance by gouging out his own eyes. From another corner, in Romeo and Juliet, the two lovers have sought release from their crossed love by killing themselves. The audience experiences a catharsis when the two families bury the hatchet. What exactly is Aristotle's legacy? From the 6th through the 12th centuries, that is to say throughout the medieval period, although the bulk of Aristotle's writings were lost to the West, they received extensive consideration in Byzantine philosophy and particularly in Arabic philosophy, where Aristotle was so prominent that he became known simply as the first teacher. According to this tradition, the notably rigorous and illuminated commentaries of Avicenna and Averroes interpreted and developed Aristotle's views in striking ways. These commentaries, in turn, proved exceedingly influential in the earliest reception of the Aristotelian corpus into the Latin West in the 12th century. Among Aristotle's greatest exponents during the early period of his reintroduction to the West by Islamic researchers, Albertus Magnus, and above all his student Thomas Aquinas, sought to reconcile Aristotle's philosophy with Christian thought. Interest in Aristotle's work continued throughout the Renaissance in the form of Renaissance Aristotelianism. The dominant figures of this period overlap with the last flowerings of medieval Aristotelian scholasticism, which reached a rich and high point that was influential up to Descartes and much later than him, going further and further by affecting various Eastern as well as Western researchers and people of thought and sciences.
As you know, we can easily access some very helpful videos and resources on the internet, especially on YouTube. So you can enjoy my colleague Iman Al-Halak's lecture on Aristotle and his ideas on tragedy. To enjoy the video, just click. Yes, so far we have discussed that Aristotle, unlike Plato, believed in the power of poetry and tragedy in a way that these could contribute to society's development, well-being, and personal perfection. But in a tragedy, there had to be organic unity. That is to say, all segments, all parts of a tragedy must relate and must make a complete whole. That is to say, all parts, including diction, the plot, characters, setting, music, and so on, they had to work together to create this effect, which we call catharsis. Therefore, one thing we have to understand when reading Aristotle is that with the help of Aristotle, or with Aristotle's work, we started to move away from the Platonic conception or Platonic conceptualization of literature and art as fundamentally unnecessary and at times very dangerous entities for societies. So Plato, unlike his student Aristotle, remember, believed that arts, music, and poetry, literature by and large, moved people's attention away from reality. However, unlike his teacher, Aristotle argued that literature, especially poetry and tragedy, improves society by giving them catharsis, through which the viewers or the readers could get rid of horrible or negative emotions or ideas, which in time may help improving the status of all society. Therefore, we have to see that breakaway from Plato's understanding of poetry as a not so useful art, with the help of Aristotle. In that sense, Aristotle did not only bring something new, but also he made sure that, or he ensured that all parts had to work together to create this effect that can affect human psychology and human well-being.
You have finished reading, listening, and writing about Aristotle. Great job. Enjoy.